today we are going to learn how to display data and how to generate frequency tables and histograms. So let's get to it. I'm going to use actual data to do this. Let's assume we have a classroom, and in the classroom we have 36 students, and they took a quiz and they got these grades out of 20. And this is what I call a data dump. And what I need to do is to generate a frequency table using the data, and then take that frequency table and generate a histogram. In the process, I'm going to use what I call a graphing calculator, primarily the TI-84 Plus, and we are going to learn how to enter the data into that calculator and sort the data, and we are going to learn how to generate a histogram, both by hand and with the calculator. So let's assume I have a data, 36 students, and these grades are obtained. So to do a frequency table, I need to decide how many classes I want to group this data in. So I decide that I want to pick 5 classes. The first thing you need to do, you need to pick a class width. The class width is going to be your maximum minus your minimum, and then the number of classes that you pick. In a small data set like this, you will be able to pick the maximum and minimum. I can actually see 20 is the highest score and 2 is the lowest score. However, in a big data set, I won't be able to do that. So I need a machine to sort the data. So let's go to TI-84, and I'll show you how to enter this data into the TI-84 and actually sort the data in there. So you start by turning your calculator on, and you are going to go to an area where it says stat. So I'm using, it's looking a little bit funky because I'm using the computer version of this calculator called Smart View from TI, and I'm going to push these buttons so that you can see the arrow, which button I'm pushing. And here in this screen, you're going to be able to see the keystrokes that I'm actually pushing. And these are the keystrokes that you are going to have to push at home. To enter the data, you turn your calculator on, and now you push the stat button, which is the second row, third from the left. You will have an edit, calculate, test option in this window. The one that you're going to pick is going to be edit. When you push edit, you can actually pick the edit by pushing 1. That's the option 1. So what you do, it will go to the first line, and you're going to have to enter that data by yourself. But I did this ahead of time so that we don't spend the time entering the data here. So I look at my analog data, and I pretty much enter these numbers one at a time. This works just like an Excel sheet. So you go up and down using the up-down button. And the beauty about this, it tells you what list it puts in and what row you're in. This one means in row 2, in column L1, I have the value 20. So I went ahead and entered all these values so that I can start sorting them. Now, to be able to sort it, I need to go back to the stat menu. And if you see, the second option is going to be the sort A. A means ascending. D means descending. So let's do a sort A. When I want to pick this, all I have to do is just push the enter button, and you're going to see the display. You got sort A, and what do you want to sort? You're going to sort the L1, and you need to go and find the L1. If you look at your calculator, the L1 is going to be that blue button, second button here, and the 1 key. So what you do is second L1. And you will actually see it displayed, and close the parentheses and hit enter to tell the calculator that you need to sort that data. So the L1 is sorted now. To see that it is sorted, all you have to do is go to Stat, Edit, and pick that option by entering Enter. And you see that the smallest number is on top, and the biggest number is going to be at the bottom. All right? It's going to go all the way down, and the last data is going to be your largest number, which is 20. Once you have that, you can go back to your max minus min divided by number of classes and calculate the class width. So I put the maximum minus the minimum, and I pick that class width of 5. I will get a value of 3.6. You have to keep in mind that to be able to cover all the data and display it in the graphical format, you need to always round to 4. So I will write here, remember to always round up. So I round up. If this was not 3.6 but 3.1, you would still round it up to 4 to be able to cover all the data. Now, what we're going to do now, we are going to go to the next phase. So I have my data entered, and I have my class width. The next thing you do is to generate what we call a frequency table. The frequency table starts with a class limit. The next thing you need to do is boundaries. And now you can also put the midpoint. We are going to calculate that. And this is how you tally your data. You're going to look at your calculator and count how many hits you have. And frequency is the number version of the tally. And the cumulative frequency is going to be, you're going to add these numbers and put it in here. Add all these three, put it in here. You're going to put the cumulative values. So we are going to generate a frequency table. And I got it simply started. So you know that your class width is 4. This is how you get started. You go to your class limit and you pick 2 as your minimum. Now, you're going to add the class width of 4 to it. And the way to do that, I'll just move this to the left a little bit. You're going to add that class width to it, plus 4. And get the lower limit of the class limit again. This gave you 2 plus 4, 6. Add 4 again, that gave you 10. Add 4 again, that gave you 14. Add 4 again, that gave you 18. Those are the lower limits of the class limit. Now you're adding the class width each time. How do you get the upper limit of the class limit? What you're going to do, you're going to go one integer less than this value. So if I'm starting with 6, that means I have to go 2 to 5, 6 to 1 less than that, 9, 10 to 1 less than that, 13, and 14, 1 less than that, to 17. And look the difference in here. We are going 14 plus 3, 17. So I have to go 18 plus 3, 21. So these are going to be my class limits. Now I need to find out the class boundaries. The class boundaries are things that you have to put in here that are not going to have any gaps anymore. So what you want to do, think of it like making 2 to 5 a little bit fatter on both sides so that they have an overlap right here. So if I make this a little bit fatter to the left, like half a step, I'm going to get 1.5 to 5.5 if I make it a little fatter on the right. Then I will start to 5.5 to 9.5. Then I will go from 9.5 to 13.5. Then I will go from 13.5 to 17.5. And I will go from 17.5 to 21.5. That will give me the boundaries. Now, to get the midpoints, all you have to do is just look at the class limits, and you are going to add, to get the midpoint, the lower and the upper limit and divide by 2. For the first one, I'll just write it down in here. 2 plus 5 divided by 2. That will simply give you 7 divided by 2, 3.5. So my class limit for the first line is going to be, the midpoint for my first line is going to be 3.5. Now you're going to do the same thing for the next line, 6 to 9. How do you go from 6 to 9? 9 plus 6, that's 15, divided by 2, 7.5. So the next one, 10 plus 13, 23, divided by 2, that's going to give you 11.5. Now you can actually get a pattern from writing this down. You see that these two are going to differ by 4. So you can go ahead and add 4 to all this and get the next midpoint without doing too many calculations. So let's go 11.5 plus 4. 15.5 plus 4. So I end up with the midpoints. Now, once you have the midpoints, we are going to start tallying the data. Now I'm going to show you how to fill in the tally column. The best way to do that is to go to your calculator, TI-84, and look at your sorted data. Go up using the up button, and so that you can actually see the lowest value, and then at the bottom you can see the highest value. Start with the lowest value and make sure you are in row 1. So the way to do that, you can use the down button. Now I want to count, if you look in here in the table, how many values are between 2 and 5. Or you can think about it, how many values are between 15.5 and 5.5. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go to my calculator and count and then put it in my table. So the first one is 2, 1. So the first one, I'm going to do the count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I have 5 values that are in L1. Actually, this is very good to do with a buddy. So you can go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5. Then you go to the next one. You count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's as well 5, because you have to enter, you have to stop at 9.5. So you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now I'm looking for values that are between 9.5 and 13.5. So let's start with 10 and let's count. I'm going to count. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The 7th one is too big, so I have 6. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now you're going to go to the next one. 6. Now I'm going to go to the next group. I need values between 13.5 and 17.5. I'm going to start with 14. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. I got 13 of them. The way you enter it is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3. Actually, the whole purpose of the tally is to be able to write it down, put a mark while you're scrolling down your calculator, but I cannot do that real well. So I'm just doing it so you can do it with a buddy yourselves. Then the last one, you are going to go 17.5 to 21.5. So let's go back. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And that's it. That's my last data. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now you have your tally filled out. All you have to do now, write the frequencies. All you have to do is just write that number. You can actually bypass this whole thing if you want. 5, 5, 6, 13, and 7. Now, For the cumulative frequency column, what you need to do, you're going to add row 1 to row 2 and right here. So the row 1 is going to be the same. 5 plus 5, that's 10. 10 plus 6, that's 16. 16 plus 13, that's 29. 20 plus 7, 36. Make sure this last number will be the same as the number of data points that you have. Now, we actually finished the frequency table. The next step is to generate graphs that correspond to this frequency table. The one of the graphs that is very, very common is a histogram. So what I'm going to do, the histogram is going to use the boundaries, and we'll look at the midpoint, and is going to put the frequency on the y-axis. So when you do that, you're going to put that as a bar graph. And I will also use a hybrid approach. I'll do this by hand, and then I will show you how this is done using your graphing calculator. So I'll put this table aside for a moment so that I can go to graphing portion. Now, I know that I need to pick x and y axis in such a way that I have to go as low as 2 and I have to go as high as 21 for the boundaries. So I just prepared that grid for you. So I'm going to start someplace around here so it's nice and centered. And I'm going to draw it by hand. And you can do this with a ruler. And what I will do, I will pretty much start from 0. And this axis is going to be my boundaries. 0, 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. Then you can actually label this. You can say boundaries, or you can say grade boundaries. You can label it any which way you want. So that's going to be your x-axis. And what was this corresponding to? This is corresponding to the boundary column. So it's going from 1.5 to 21.5. So I went ahead and I put 0 to 20, and that's 22. So I can start putting my bar graph. The y-axis, on the other hand, is going to be the frequencies. When you look at how small and how big your frequencies are, the smallest is 5 and the biggest one is 13. So to do that, you go, okay, 5 to 13. Maybe I will just pick the same kind of scale, 2, 4, 6 scale, and I will go and draw that. This is 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14. So you can go actually label this frequency, and you can label this boundary. Now, I'm going to look at my data. I know the first one is going to go from 1.5 to 5.5, and it's going to have a frequency of 5. 1.5 to 5.5. This is 5, 5.5, and it's going to have a frequency of 5. Here's your first chart. The next one you're going to go and find out. It's going to go 5.5 to 9.5, and it's going to have a frequency of 5 again. 5.5, this is 9, 9.5, and it will still have a frequency of 5. The next one is going to be 9.5 to 13.5. That's going to have a frequency of 6. 13.5 is 13 is here, so you're going to go a little bit more. 13.5. Now this is kind of like a big one. Oh, this one is going to have a frequency of 6, so I'm going to go and have a frequency of 6. The next one is 13.5 to 17.5, and 17 is here, 17.5. That is going to have that big jump, 13 frequency. So 13 is about here. So I'm going to go all the way up. Here's 14. 13 is a little bit smaller, so I'm not using a ruler. And this is how it's going to look like. The frequency that's corresponding to this. Then I'm going to have the last one, 17.5 to 21.5, and that's going to have a frequency of 7. So it's a little bit bigger than 6. And so we got our histograms. The histogram will tell me most people got grades in this region, but it is kind of like evenly distributed. A teacher can actually look at this histogram and make some sense out of it. Now I will show you how you can do this, and you realize how long it takes to develop a histogram in your drawing. You can actually do the same thing with your graphing calculator, and you can adjust all the widths and all this. So I'm going to take you to a new menu. Let's go to the calculator. Your calculator actually has a couple of those buttons built in. What I'm going to do is I'm going to use a stat plot. To get to the stat plot and do the stat plot, and actually you can see the stat plot menu in here. My mouse is sticking. Here we go. You are going to push second stat plot, and that will take you to this menu. Now you can do a couple of plots in there, so you need to turn them on first. One way to turn them on is pretty much go to the number, and then it will say on and off, and to pick on you have to hit enter. Then after that, what you need to do is you need to go and pick one of these graphs. The one that we are interested in is this one. It looks like a bar graph. So to be able to go to that area, you have to go down and then to the right. To select it, you have to hit enter again. Now you have to tell them where your L1 is, where the list is. To be able to do that, you have to go down and then enter L1. If your data was in L2, you would just push the L2 and enter that address. Don't worry about the frequency right now. So if I push the graph button at this point, your guess is as good as mine. I did not modify anything in terms of window. It will default to something. So I need to make sure that my window is going to have 5 classes, and I didn't enter anything. So I need to control that somehow. To do that, you go to Window. Then you can enter your minimum and maximum there. The minimum is 2. Remember, we picked that by sorting the data. The maximum is 4, and remember that we did that by sorting the data. This one is going to X scale is going to define what your class width is. Remember, we did calculate the class width and round it to the next integer, and that happens to be 4. Now I want to have some room so that I can plot my y-axis. I picked the negative value. You don't have to take a negative 10. You can take a negative 5. The y-max is the biggest frequency. I'm supposed to cover up to 13, but I put 20 just so that it looks good. So I have this y scale. Just don't worry about that. Though when you hit graph, it should give you your histogram. Now, to be able to see these values, what you need to do, your calculator also has a built-in thing, and you can actually, you see the window here and the plots thing, and you can actually go and hit trace button. Look what it does. It actually goes and it's blinking. It tells you what the value is. It tells you it is 5. And the minimum is 2 and maximum is 6 in here. And then if you want to go more, you just push the right button and it went to the 5. So it is telling you what the values are. The next one, if I look at my graph, at my table, it is supposed to be 6. Let's go right. And that's 6. And the next one, I know it's 13, and let's see if that's the case. 13. So you can see those needings. And the last one is supposed to be 7. 7. So you successfully generated a histogram. Let's assume you did not want the class with a 4, you wanted more families, more groups. So you can actually go and change the settings in window, and you can say, okay, well, don't pick 4, but pick 3. So we're making the class width a little bit smaller. So if you want to do this by hand, you'll have to go and recalculate everything and redo the frequency table. But here I will just do 3 and so that you can see it. When I do the graph, and now you're going to see a lot more classes, and then you can actually do the same thing and look at the values going left and right. I want to also show you a couple of other graphs, and you will see those in your book before I wind this up. So let me clear the history of the keystrokes so you can see it. You can actually go to Stat if you want to do other plots yourself. If you want to do, for example, the plot of midpoints and the frequencies, and you want to, let's go back to the table. You want to plot midpoints on the x-axis and the frequencies on the y-axis, you can do that. One way to do that, you cannot use this data anymore. You can go to your calculator. Now I'm going to go to the right. I'm going to enter the midpoints that I calculated and the frequencies in here. So I'll forget about L1. I'm going to enter this data. So the first value midpoint is 3.5. The next one is 7.5. The next one is 11.5. The next one is 15.5. And the next one is 19.5. So I entered the midpoints. Now I can go to L2 now. I will enter the frequencies. The frequencies were 5, 5 again, and it was 6 and 13 and 7. I'm actually showing you a line plot, how it can be developed, and that particular line plot is going to be called ogive. So I want this on the x-axis, I want this on the y-axis. If I want to do that, I go to stat plot again. So I remember where I put my x-axis, I remember where I put my y-axis. So let's go to stat plot and turn the plot on. Now I'm going to pick this other graph, which is going to be, if I want to do this one, I will just simply pick that one. Now, this time it's going to ask you, where do you want your x and y? I put my x one right here. So let's go down. I will put L2 because that's where my x-axis is. So you have to enter second 2. Now to say where my y-axis is, that was in L3, so I have to go to second 3. So that gives you L3. These are your choices to do the scattered plot. In other words, every data point is going to be either a square, a plus, or a dot. So I did all that already. So if I wanted just to zoom in a standard way, another feature is zoom standard. It goes from -10 to 10, -10 to 10. That may not be your best bet. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to go, okay, I'm going to modify my window. I'm going to go the minimum of maybe 1. Let's go minimum of 0 for the x-axis. The maximum, these are your midpoints, maximum of 20. That sounds pretty good. Let's give 1 to that. And y minimum, -10, well, that is kind of big, but I'll do -5. So I'm changing those so that you can actually see it. Now I'm going to graph it. Do you see what happened? This is called ogive. The version that you can generate by hand will have this coming down and this coming down. But I just entered that. To be able to close this, you have to enter those points as ordered pairs so that you can have this polygon closed up. But this is another type of graph that you can generate in addition to the histogram that will give you the same kind of information.